Hi everyone, I'm Dr. Miha and welcome to the channel. In today's video, we are revisiting LM Studio. Now I have a video on LM Studio from a few months ago and you can find that link below, but I wanted to do an update because a number of things have changed with the software and there's a number of new models that I wanted to highlight. You can find timestamps for everything down below. We will cover 5 different things in the video. Number 1, I will review installation and setup for LM Studio. 2, we are going to explore some new models that have recently become available. 3, we'll look at new ways of loading models in LM Studio, specifically focusing on capacity and efficiency so you can get the most out of the models that you use. 4, we are going to look at some interesting add-ins, specifically where we'll look at add-ins that allow you to give LM Studio access to the web. And 5, we'll take a quick look at something called LM Link, which allows you to use your own instance of LM Studio remotely. And finally, at the end, I will offer some strengths and weaknesses of LM Studio, at least as compared to the cloud models, and offer some advice based on what I have found useful and the way that I approach this. All right, you can find timestamps for everything down below. Jump to whatever section you're interested in. Let's not waste any time and jump to the studio. Let's start with the installation. To install LM Studio, all you need to do is go to lmstudio.ai and follow the instructions. It should automatically identify your operating system. For me, it's Windows. Click the download button and install it like you would any other app on your computer. There really is nothing tricky about this. If it does ask you whether you want to enable power user or developer mode, turn that on. I'll show you why in a second. If you forget to turn it on, don't worry, we can access that through settings. Now, the first thing I recommend we do is on the bottom left, go to settings and set up the tool to your liking. Under general, you can always check for updates just to make sure you're running the latest version. I would leave this unstable. I don't recommend using the beta branch. Again, you can go through the settings, you can set the appearance and set it up to your liking. If you did not turn on developer mode during installation, you can do that here simply by clicking on or off. And again, you can customize everything to your liking here. I left most of these things on the default settings, but set it up the way you like. Under the system area, you have 2 tabs. I would say first go to hardware. Here you can identify your CPU and your GPU and how much RAM you have. If you have multiple graphics cards, this section here is where you can decide which ones to use. And up here, this is really important. It'll show you your total RAM, system RAM, and your video RAM. Keep the video RAM number in mind because this will be important when we are loading models. I would leave the rest as is. On the runtime tab, just above hardware, check for updates and make sure that all of the things here are updated. Again, leave it unstable. Don't go to beta branch. Under GGUF, if you are running an NVIDIA GPU, make sure you have the latest CUDA Llama CPP activated. If you were to choose CPU, then the system will use your CPU instead of your GPU. You want to use your GPU to get the most out of your computer. It'll be a lot quicker and a lot faster if you run models on your GPU. If you are not using an NVIDIA GPU, if you have an AMD processor or an AMD GPU, if you have a Mac, for example, you will see under here only the GGUFs that are relevant to you. So if you leave this uncompatible only, it should only show you what you can run. If you show all, you will see everything, right? And so it's automatically not showing me these because I'm running this on a Windows 11 PC. We'll close this for now, and that's pretty much it for setup, and we're good to go. To get started, first thing we need to do is load a model. Now, we've covered this in the previous video, so I'll only highlight here a couple of new models that I found interesting that might be worth exploring. To start loading your models, click this little search icon next to the robot face. And this will show you all the models that you can download. Now, there is a lot here. Don't get overwhelmed. We're not going to use all of them. You'll only probably use a few. My recommendation is click on here where it says best match. Make sure that only includes staff picks that can fit on my device. This will ensure that it will only show you models that you can run based on your hardware. Which model should you try? Well, there's a couple I would recommend. First, there are a series of models from NVIDIA. These came out very recently. NVIDIA's models are called Nemotron. So here are the models that would fit on my computer. Again, this might be different for you. I would say start with smaller models. This number at the end of the model, 4B, is a good approximation for size. And if you look on the left here, you'll see that full GPU offload possible. This means that this entire model can be loaded into my VRAM. This is important because it will run faster. If I look at this model, which you'll see is a 120B, here it says partial offload possible. This means that part of the model can be loaded into my video RAM, part of it will be loaded into my system RAM, so it would not be as fast as if loading the entire model into VRAM. For most use cases, any 4B, 8B, 16B, anything around there is going to be absolutely fine. Other models that I recommend trying would be Qwen. These are models from Alibaba. Now, I know that some organizations do not allow these models because they do come from a Chinese company. If you're running these locally, if it's only for your personal use, I don't see any reason why you shouldn't be able to run these. And remember, this runs locally. This is not in a cloud server at a data center in China, right? This is all local. This particular model, Qwen 3.535BA3B, is the one that I've used a lot. I find it a good compromise between size and speed. Other models that are worth trying out include Mistral. These have been popular for quite a while now. I often use Mistral 14B and 3B. Both of these are great models and should run on most hardware. And finally, I recommend looking at Gemma models. The Gemma 3 and E4B should run on most hardware. I tend to use a lot of Gemma 327B. This should run on a lot of hardware as well. So these are some of the models. You can explore many, many others here. Again, my advice is just make sure that under best match, you leave this option on so that you're only seeing models that you can run on your computer based on your hardware. That's all it takes. So once you identify a model that you want, so let's say this Nemotron 3 Nano 4B from NVIDIA, simply make sure, right, that it can run on your computer and then click download. And that's all you need to do. And the model will be downloaded and installed on your computer. For most use cases, I think any model, 4B, 8B, will be perfectly fine. Anything in that range. It's not necessarily better to run bigger models. So here's all the ones that I currently have installed on this computer. And you'll notice that, I have everything from 122B models to 27 3Bs. Don't necessarily look for the biggest number. That does not necessarily mean better for what you're trying to do, because it will very much depend on what you're doing and, of course, on your hardware. My recommendation is start with 3B, 8B models, and then work your way up from there and see what works for you. So let's load a model. The first thing you want to do is start a new conversation by clicking this button up here. And right now, no model is loaded. So if we say hello, it will tell us there's no model, right? Load a model. So we can either click model loader here, or I can close this and just click up here. And here we go. These are all of our models. I will, for this test, select Mistral 3B. So I'm going to click this. And here is an option screen. This is what I want to walk you through. There are many options here, and I will show you the advanced settings just for information. But for most users, we're only going to try to find a balance between two things. Context length, which basically is how much memory the model has, and GPU offload, which determines how much of the model lives in your GPU, which means it'll run faster. So first things first, you can see here, I can load up to 262,000 tokens. That is a lot. Much more than you need for basic tasks. For simple editing, so let's say you have a one-page email and you want the model to give you some edits or some recommendations for improvements, it's perfectly fine to set this down to 2,000 or 3,000 tokens. That is more than sufficient. For our test today, I will set this to 20,000 tokens to show you how this handles a relatively large PDF. For GPU offload, so if you move this bar, I'm going to move it down to 0, so nothing is a GPU. You will notice that GPU memory falls to, about 5 megabytes, almost nothing. But the further I increase this, so the more of this model we're loading into GPU, into our video RAM, the more GPU video RAM you'll need. So what you want to do is find a balance between these two, because if I increase context length, you'll see that the GPU video RAM requirements also increases. So this is that fine balance, right, between memory and speed. I'll leave this to 20,000 for now, and I'll leave it all offloaded into GPU because I can. The good news is you only really have to find this ideal balance once, because once you have it, just click remember settings for this model, and it'll always remember it. Now, there are a few other advanced options. I'm going to show you this just for sake of completeness here. I recommend just leaving all the advanced settings as they are, and I'm going to do my best to kind of give you a really simple, non-technical explanation. So I will oversimplify this, but just in case you're interested, so you know roughly what these other things do. CPU thread pool is basically how many threads in your CPU the model will use. A bigger number is not necessarily better. Evaluation batch size is basically how big chunks the model will upload and use. Again, bigger isn't necessarily better, because if the model's doing more work, it could slow it down. So, bigger, again, isn't necessarily better here in this case. And then we have max concurrent predictions. This is how many the processes or responses or tasks the model does at the same time. I would just leave this as it is. Unified KV cache is a memory saving feature that helps the model save memory. The ROPE frequency base and frequency scale are advanced settings that help the model track its position in text or how it handles long text. Again, leave this as it is. Offload KV cache to GPU memory tells the model to store more of your conversation in GPU memory. That makes it faster if your GPU, of course, has enough space. Try MMAP is just a way of loading models. It just makes it a little bit more efficient in terms of loading. Seed lets you set a starting point for randomness. If you want to make results more repeatable, again, it's something you can play with if you want to, but I would just leave it as it is. Flash attention is optimization option that makes the model run faster and more efficiently if your hardware supports this option. And then the last two options, the K-cache quantization and V-cache quantization, compresses part of the model's memory to save resources. Again, it's a trade-off between quality in some instances. Again, I would just leave this as it is. So you don't have to change any of these options. In fact, I would just leave them as they are. Just look at the two main ones, context length and GPU offload. You want to find the balance between those. Again, your goal is to make sure that this number up here, right, is not larger than your VRAM if you want to run the models as quickly as possible. So once we've done this balance, we load our model. You want to give it a second to load. Bigger models will take longer to load, so please be patient. Now, if we write hello, you'll see the model actually responds, right? In French, perfect. So let's start a new conversation here, and we will use this model. So I'm going to do new chat. All right, you'll see that Mistral is still loaded. So what I'm going to do is upload a PDF document just to show you how many tokens we will use when we work with a decently sized document. The document we'll use today is a report on artificial intelligence in government. This is from the National Conference of State Legislatures. This is a 9-page PDF document. You can find it in the video description below. And I'll move my camera up a little bit just so you can clearly see the token count as we use these documents. So let me begin by loading the first document. And we will use a very simple prompt. We'll just ask for a high-level summary of the contents. So we see in this case, we've used about 45% of our tokens, just shy of 9,000 out of 20,000 tokens. This is a 9-page PDF. This 9,000 tokens includes the document itself, our prompt, and it includes the response, which you see here. Now, let's continue working with this document to see how far 20,000 tokens can get us. Let's say that we want to turn this into a memo for a senior government official. All right, so here is our draft memo. Here's the full text. And right now, we see that we've used just another 1,400 or so tokens. We're now at 51.6% over 20,000 limit in this particular chat. And let's do one more prompt. Let's say that we wanted to translate this into language that a high schooler would understand. So here's our third prompt. And we are now at 54, just shy of 54%. So the bulk of the tokens really came from the document, uh, with 2 prompts and about 2 or 3 pages of output. We added maybe another 4 or 5% of token use. So this should give you an idea of how far 20,000 tokens will get you. But what if we're dealing with a much larger document? I'll start a new conversation and this time load a PDF that is over 50 pages. For this example, we will use a 56-page OECD technical paper on the state of AI. And let me load it here. And let's use the same prompt that we used for the previous documents. Here's our summary. We'll let it finish to get an updated token count. So here we've used 3,600 tokens. So why would we have used less tokens for a much larger PDF? Well, it turns out that you shouldn't judge the token requirement purely based on PDF size. The first document we loaded had a lot of dense text, not many images at all, no graphics. This document, even though it's larger and has more pages, actually has more images, more graphics, and the text is a lot more spread out across these pages. This is important because this tells us something about tokens. Token use is related to the content that AI is absorbing from these documents. And the amount of content in a document isn't necessarily directly correlated with page numbers. Just something to keep in mind. So 20,000 tokens will probably be sufficient for most of your conversations, even if you're interacting with 9, 10, 20-page PDF documents that are fairly text heavy. So before you increase token count when you're loading your models, do consider, do you really need all those tokens? More tokens does not necessarily mean a better memory recall by the AI tool. It does not necessarily mean better output. There are a lot of variables that go into that. Token count is just one of them. Most of the conversations that I have with AI models in LM Studio, I will usually limit to 20 to 30,000 tokens unless I really know that I need a much, much larger contextual memory. What if we wanted LM Studio to search the web? I know that is a very common use for LLMs today. And turns out you can do that, but LM Studio won't do it by default. This is why we need plugins. So first of all, we need to make sure we load a model that supports plugins. Very easy way to tell that. When you're looking at your model list, just make sure it has this little hammer icon. So you see a lot of these models will use tools. So let's just stick with Mistral since that's what we've been using. Let's ask it to visit a web page. And what we can do is ask it to visit the official LM Studio website. What is on this website? So here's the full URL. Well, it says I don't have real-time web browsing capabilities. All right, let's see if we can fix that. I did do a pretty good guess, but let's see if we can fix that. In order to browse the web, we need a few plugins. Luckily, those are easy to find. You can find links to the two we'll look at today in the description below, although you can browse these on your own on the LM Studio website. So let's go back to the web page. Now, the tools that we want come from one developer. He has two of these. One is called DuckDuckGo, which is a plugin that allows LM Studio access to the DuckDuckGo web search engine. And the second one is Visit Website, which allows LM Studio to visit a website. So let's get these. Easy to install. Simply follow the links below. Click here, go to Run in LM Studio, open in LM Studio. This will open it up in LM Studio. You'll just click download, wait for it to finish, click run. So this allows it to search DuckDuckGo. Now let's also get the other plugin, which will allow us to visit websites. Once again, up here, just click run in LM Studio, open it in LM Studio. You'll get a prompt in your LM Studio, download, click run, and that's it. That's all it takes. These plugins are now installed. Now let's ask it exactly the same thing. I'll copy this prompt. We'll ask it once again to go to the official LM Studio website. By default, these plugins will always ask you if they can proceed. So it's basically saying, I want to visit the web. Can I do that? And you can say proceed. Now this will get annoying very quickly. So you can always say, always have permission to proceed. And here you go. It went to the website and it gave a summary of what is on this website. Now, if you wanted to configure these plugins, you can do that. Click this button up here on the right. and you can see the plugins we have loaded. In this case, we've got these two. Let me just minimize this, DuckDuckGo and the website viewer. If you want to disable this functionality, very simple, just switch it off here and you'll see it disappears from the chat. So if we turn it on, it appears in chat. If you click here, it disappears from chat. That's it. That's all it takes. If we ask it the same prompt now, again, we've taken away the ability to search the web. It's going to say, well, based on my last search. So it's not searching the web anymore. If you start a new chat and you don't see the web search option down here, you can click on this tool icon and just enable it here. So we can turn them on here. And once again, they appear down here. That's it. That's all it takes. By the way, the same is true with chatting with files. RAG v1, this should be installed by default. This is what allows LM Studio to load files. If you turn this off, we can no longer load files. There are a ton of different plugins that you can get for LM Studio. You can explore those on your own on the website. Again, links are in the video description below. But just for simple web searching, these are the only ones that you need. Just make sure you load a model that has the hammer icon. And the last thing that I want to show you today is how to use LM Link, which allows you to set up remote access to your instance of LM Studio so you can access it from anywhere on the go. This is very useful if you have a relatively powerful computer or a workstation that you're using and you want to be able to access this from your laptop or perhaps when you're traveling on your phone. What I'll show you today is how you can set this up. There is a waiting period, so this is being rolled out slowly to users. But again, there is no fee. This is currently free. To get started, first thing we're going to do is on the left here, you want to go to this LM Link settings. This will ask you to log in order to request access. It took me about 4 or 5 days to get access, so that may vary, but request access and at some point you should get it. It should not take too long. So what we actually need to do is log in. So we're going to go back to the main LM Studio website. In addition to the download button, you can log in. So I'll just log in with my account. All right, so I am now logged in. You'll see that the LM Link from me will be enabled, again, because I requested access. So if we go back to LM Studio, now I should be signed in. There we go. All right, so now you'll see that I'm logged in. What you'll see down here is this device, TechnoCat. That's my main desktop computer, and yes, I like cats. So this is now connected to LM Link. Now, what I have on the side here is I have my laptop. So I'm going to log into LM Studio on my laptop and show you what happens when I log in to the same account. You only need one account. You download LM Studio on multiple computers. As long as you log in with the same account on multiple computers, they should all show up here. So here we go. My laptop is connected, and you can see here on the right all the models I have installed on my laptop. Now, my laptop is not as powerful as desktop, so we're doing this kind of the wrong way around, right? You should be running models on your most powerful computer, accessing them from your least powerful, but just for the demonstration purposes, I'll run these models off my laptop. So all you need to do is identify the model you want to run and load it. You don't even have to do it from here. We're going to go back to conversations. So click this button up here. This will take us back to the main screen. We're going to kick this model out. Let's start a new conversation and let's select the model. Now you'll see, in addition to the models on my desktop, here are the models I have on my laptop. This icon will show you that these will be loaded through LM Link. So let's load one of these models. Let's run the Mistral model here on my laptop instead of my desktop. Load. And this model is now loaded on my laptop, not on my desktop. So as I have a conversation with it here, it is not running on my desktop. It's actually going through my network, going through LM Link, accessing my laptop, running this prompt on my laptop, and then giving me the answers here. And that's all it takes. That's it. I'm now running it remotely. Once you set this up, as long as you sign in with the same LM Studio account on your home computer or your workstation, wherever you're running LM Studio, whatever your more powerful computer is, as long as you log into the same LM Studio account remotely on your laptop or tablet or whatever your on-the-go computer is, you will see your main computer here. This used to be a lot harder. You had to go through many steps to be able to access LM Studio remotely, but LM Link has made this much, much simpler. If you want to turn it off, you can just go to settings, go to LM Link options here, and just do disable, and that's it, and it's off. And you'll notice here, the model is no longer loaded because we're no longer connected to my laptop. And this option here disappears as well. So if you don't see the option down here for LM Link, go under settings, make sure that LM Link is enabled, and then you'll see it and you'll be able to connect to your devices. It's connecting to LM Link, and it should automatically recognize my laptop. If you want to get a really quick summary of how this works, if you click this button up here, learn how it works, it will give you a really quick summary of what's actually happening when you run these models, and a little bit of FAQ. There you go. That's all it takes to access LM Studio remotely. They've really made this simpler. I think it's a fantastic tool. It's constantly being developed, and I'm certainly looking forward to further updates that will improve not just the user interface and our user experience, but will also add more options. And I hope that they will continue keeping this tool relatively simple so that you do not need a technical background to use it. As you saw, there are clearly pros and cons to using LM Studio versus cloud-based models. 3 advantages to consider. Number 1, privacy and confidentiality. Everything you do in LM Studio stays on your computer, which means your data is not used to train models. 2, your environmental footprint is likely lower if you use LM Studio. Now, this will depend on tasks, but for everyday prompting, such as editing emails, brainstorming, or searching the web, you are probably leaving a much smaller footprint if you use LM Studio versus using a cloud-based model like ChatGPT, Claude, or Gemini. And 3, you have a lot more ability to customize the LM Studio models to fit your use cases. And this is especially true if you're using agentic AI, such as OpenClaw, because you can use LM Studio in OpenClaw and also save a lot of money by not paying for tokens to some of the larger providers. There are, of course, also some disadvantages. Number 1, as you saw, cloud-based models are faster. So if speed is what's important to you, then LM Studio may not be the best choice, at least not for complex tasks that require large prompts or where you're processing large files. 2, cloud-based tools can do some things that LM Studio can't. For example, generating video or images is something that is much more difficult to do in LM Studio. At least there isn't an easy, non-technical way of setting it up. And so if that's important to you, if you're generating graphics, then you probably still need access to cloud-based tools. And 3 is portability. Cloud-based models live in the cloud, so you can access your conversations anywhere, while with LM Studio, you have to use something like LM Link. Personally, I'm starting to lean more towards LM Studio, at least when it comes to simple prompts, when it comes to revisions for memos, or dealing with smaller documents. I'm doing this for 2 reasons. Number 1, I care about privacy and confidentiality. And 2, I want to limit my environmental footprint and limit my reliance on data centers. My advice is don't just jump straight into LM Studio because of privacy. And also don't just automatically reject it because it's slower. Rather, have a look at your own workflows. Have a look at your data governance documents. Have a look at your own use cases and then decide which particular tasks you could use LM Studio and for which particular tasks you should remain on cloud-based AI models. I hope you found this short update to LM Studio interesting. If you enjoyed the video, consider giving it a thumbs up and subscribing to the channel. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.